It was the year The Godfather won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. NASA launched Skylab, America's first space station. Chicago's Sears Tower became the tallest building in the world. The Watergate scandal got underway in Washington. And in Newark, Ohio, a 10-year-old kid was starting to expand his musical horizons into various different styles than what he had been doing before, touching several different genres and still liking some of the same stuff. The year was 1973. I'm T.C. Kirkham of the Kirkham Report. This is Vinyl Recall. I'm T.C. Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. Welcome to Vinyl Recall. This is my take on Vinyl Richie's top 10 list for each year, and I'm bringing you the 10 albums I think I listened to the most in 1973. As a 9 and 10-year-old kid, I didn't have that much money to spend, and I didn't buy that many albums, but I got a lot of them as presents, and I picked a few of them up later. It was just how it was back then. I was still into pop, still into singles. But in 1973, my taste started evolving into older sounding stuff. And eventually, by the time I would get into the late 70s, I would be into a variety of different things. Most notably disco, which you're going to see a lot of when we get down there. But in 1973, I still had my share of young person stuff. I still had my share of teeny bopper and teen idols, and I had some country, some easy listening. I had a little bit of everything. Now, before you guys all blow a gasket, there are 3 albums that I would have put on this list that I don't have on vinyl. I only have them on CD. So that's why they're not on this list. They are Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield, possibly one of the greatest instrumental albums of all time. Band on the Run by Wings, which I only bought maybe 5 years ago. And Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. Love all of those albums. They're all favorites. At the time, only Tubular Bells was in my collection as an album, although I had a single, I didn't have the album. And then I got singles from the other 2 later and picked up the albums of all 3 later on when I was in my 20s, mostly, or in the case of Band on the Run, when I was in my 50s. So there it goes. So those are not on this list, but they should be. If I had them on vinyl, they would be. But I don't. These are strictly vinyl, and that's how we're doing this list, as we've done all the other weeks before. So let's start off with number 10. I talked about her last week. This is the second album, and just as good, and I played it to death. 1973, Tanya Tucker and Where's Your Mama's Name? What's Your Mama's Name? Featuring that hit single and Blood Red and Going Down, along with Horseshoe Bend, The Choking Kind, California Cotton Fields, her take on Teddy Bear Song, Song Man, the missing piece of the puzzle, Rainy Girl, Pass Me By, and Teach Me the Words to Your Song. Now, look at this, and look at this. That's a 14-year-old. This is a 14-year-old gussied up to look like her 20s or something. I don't know why it was necessary to do that. Tanya's voice was all she needed to do. Tanya's wonderful country twang was a big part of my life from the time I was about 9 till the time I was about 12 or 13, and a few things down the road as well. But I listened to this album all the time, and I just loved it. Number 10, What's Your Mama's Name? From Tanya Tucker. Number 9 was a bit of a sophisticated choice for me. And when I first picked it up, I only knew one song, and I I didn't really appreciate it until I got older, in my later teens and early 20s, when I really started to appreciate the voice, when I started to appreciate the production work, when I started to really appreciate her as an artist. But at the time, I listened to it quite a bit, even though I usually just listened to the first two songs on side one. That was then, but I still loved it, and I love it to this day. Number 9, Killing Me Softly, Roberta Flack. This is the one with the funky gatefold. You can see she's not really sitting at the piano. It's a stand-up shot of her at in concert. I don't know why they felt they had to do that, but they did. Kind of ridiculous. This album includes Killing Me Softly with his song, and Jesse. Also, No Tears in the End, I'm the Girl, River, Conversation Love, When You Smile, and Sunshine. I rarely listened to side 2 at the time, but as I got older, I really learned to appreciate the sound and the quality of the production work and Roberta's voice. I'm just always loved her singles, and this is the only album I have by her as far as I know. I should rectify that because I love her voice. Number 9, Killing Me Softly, Roberta Flack. Now, number 8 crosses into the teeny bopper part again, but it's also in the same vein as Tanya Tucker crosses into the teeny bopper version. Is that the artist is a teenager. And people were wondering, well, I suppose they were wondering, if the one girl in the family had the voice that all the brothers did. The answer was yes, and this album proved it. This is the debut album by Marie Osmond, Paper Roses. She was 14 years old here. Dig that funky pompadour on Sonny James' head there. He produced this album. Sonny, of course, huge country star. Marie went country from the very beginning. Paper Roses, Louisiana Bayou, Everything is Beautiful, You're the Only World I Know, Fool Number 1, Least of All You, Sweet Dreams, Too Many Rivers, It's Such a Pretty World Today, and True Love Lasts Forever. She was signed by Don Owens, who was the executive producer, and Sonny James produced this album for MGM Collab. It became a monster hit. Paper Roses was a major top 10 country and pop hit, and she would be on the face of music for the next 8 or 9 years until the end of the Donnie and Marie show. She was just fantastic, and she still is. Marie Osmond, Paper Roses, number 8. Number 7. I was surprised when my friend Jeff Calico Silver, doing his 1973 Hot 100 year-end list, that this song didn't come up, because it was a huge hit in 1973, but apparently it didn't make the top 100 of the year. It might have been because it came out too late, but it didn't make the top 100 in 1974 either. But for a debut album aimed at the teeny bopper crowd, the Tiger Beat crowd in particular, it was fantastic, and it still is. It is one of my favorite albums of that period, and remains one of my favorite albums of the 70s. It is also out on CD in a collection with the second album, and this is not the best copy. I have another copy that hasn't been torn off where the tear-off thing was, but this is the album that made them stars, at least for a brief time. The DeFranco Family, featuring Tony DeFranco and Heartbeat, It's a Love Beat, produced by LEG Lawfer Entertainment Group. That is the group that owned Tiger Beat magazine. This includes, I have to take the album out of the sleeve because they're not on the back sleeve. This includes Heartbeat, It's a Love Beat, I'm With You, Same Kind of Love, I Wanted to Tell You, Sweet Sweet Loretta, Abracadabra, Come a Little Closer, Love is Bigger Than Baseball, Gorilla, and I Love Everything You Do. I played this album to death. I know every one of those songs by heart. Particularly thought Same Kind of Love and Come a Little Closer could have been hit singles as well. Abracadabra, when it was released as a single, had a remix at the beginning, which was much better. But Heartbeat, It's a Love Beat was just awesome. And I'd been reading about them in Tiger Beat. I read the teen magazines when I was a kid because they were about kids my age being in the entertainment industry, and that's what I wanted to do for a living at the time. I wanted to be a singer and an actor, and never happened. But I still enjoyed it, and so I kept up on all my teen stars with Tiger Beat and 16 and all those. And first saw them in that magazine, and then they premiered on Bandstand, and then we happened to find this album in the store that afternoon, and my stepfather like, yeah, let's go ahead and get it. It was pretty good, so we did. Great album. Number 7, Tony DeFranco and the DeFranco family, and Heartbeat, It's a Love Beat. That song was a classic. It should have been on 1973's year-end list. Now, the next album I didn't actually pick up until 1974, but it did come out in 1973. And I discovered how much I really enjoyed her music when I bought the album. At first, the single kind of grated on me, and then I noticed how badly it drove my mother up the wall. And so I decided to buy the album. And I grew to love that song, even though my mom couldn't stand it. And I think that was part of the reason why, at the time, I loved making my mom crazy that way. and she really didn't mind it that much. But as long as I didn't play it around her. But she actually liked some of the rest of this album. It was that one song that drove her nuts. And I actually love a number of songs on this album, and I'm very glad I picked it up. It's a shame she never became the major star on the charts that she should have been, although she's still out there and still performing, still doing jazz pop and having the time of her life. This was the debut album, Maria Muldaur. This album features Midnight at the Oasis, which is the song my mom couldn't stand. It also features I Never Did Sing You a Love Song, which was the second single, Mad Mad Me, the work song, Don't You Feel My Leg, Don't You Get Me High, Vaudeville Man, Walkin' One and Only, Any Old Time, $3 Bill, her take on another song that I knew from Helen Reddy, Long Hard Climb, and her take on Dolly Parton's My Tennessee Mountain Home. Fantastic album. I loved it from the very second I heard it, and not just because I knew that one song drove my mom crazy. I picked up the second album, Waitress in a Donut Shop, a few months ago from Adam at Record Crate, and this will always be one of my favorites. It also has an ad for the Warner Reprise Loss Leaders in it. I wouldn't actually buy one of those until 1980, but they're very cool, and so is she. I haven't listened to this in a while. I should. It's a great album. Maria Muldaur from 1973, number 6. Number 5 is another album that my mother couldn't stand. And it wasn't really because you can see, you can see how reflective the album cover is. It wasn't really because of the songs. Although my mom was appalled that I was listening to heavy metal, it was because of the picture on the inside sleeve. And she never forgave my babysitter, Debbie, for getting me into the band. And I first bought the 45, which was on gold vinyl. I know the album is available on gold vinyl too, but I never have found it. I have the black vinyl one. And I defaced the album cover. It came with stickers, and by God, I was a 10-year-old, and I stuck the stickers on the album cover. Number 5, Grand Funk and We're an American Band. Produced by Todd Rundgren, it features scandalous pictures in the center. It has, oh, geez, I gotta have my, gold on white, good. We're an American Band, Stop Looking Back, Creepin', Black Licorice, The Railroad, Ain't Got Nobody, Walk Like a Man, and Loneliest Rider. Of course, the two singles off this man, Walk Like a Man and We're an American Band. Love this album. This was my first real taste of heavy metal, or what was passing as heavy metal or prog metal back then. I was never into that much, but I loved this album. Never really got into anything else. I loved We're an American Man. I just thought it was a great song. And I still do. Walk Like a Man is okay, and the rest of the album is awesome too. Really terrific stuff. I don't know why I never kept up with them. I knew Locomotion, of course, and a few other songs that they had over the years, but Locomotion was kind of a lame remake. I mean, it's a great job, but it wasn't what you would normally expect out of a band like Grand Funk. Um, Number five on my list, and it still holds a very soft spot in my heart. We're an American band by Grand Funk. Number four, I did not have this on vinyl, or at all, actually, in full, until the pandemic started, when I started going back and trying to grab all the albums. But I had singles by this band like crazy. And this album, I borrowed the tape, the cassette tape of it, over and over and over again at the various libraries that I would frequent were in our moves, because we moved a lot when I was a kid, different cities and stuff. And I would be borrowing this every time we went to the library, or every other time, because I loved this album from the beginning, and I still think it's their best album. I know a few people think it's a wussy album compared to some earlier stuff, but I honestly don't think today's audiences and today's collectors give the band the respect they deserve. I was a big fan. This album made me a huge fan, made me go back and listen to a lot of the earlier stuff that I didn't know already on single. And now I've been picking up their albums here and there because I just love them. They were unique to what they did. And yes, I know some people didn't like this album. It was too wussy for them. But I love it, and I still love it, and it has gotten several plays since I got it in as an album from Adam at Record Crate. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's a Record Crate sticker. From 73, this is Three Dog Night and Cyan. This album features their monster hit Shambhala, along with Singer Man, Let Me Serenade You, Let Me Down Easy, Into My Life, Happy Song, Play Children Play, Storybook Feeling, and Ridin' Thumb. This is, in my opinion, their best album. I love every song on this album. We just lost Floyd, the drummer, this week. He passed away the other day. Fantastic stuff, though. I loved Three Dog Night from pretty much Joy to the World on. Bought a lot of the singles. I had the live album also out in 1973, which came when my mom forgot to send the card back in from Columbia House. But it was great. It was 3 albums. It was a terrific live album. Great, candid look, but I still prefer this, which came out right after it. And yeah, you can make fun of it. It's softer for what they normally did. But remember, this is a band that did Pieces of April a couple of years earlier, and that was a soft song too. They were never hard rock. They were always kind of like hard-leaning yacht rock to me, and they always will be. And I love Three Dog Night, and always have. Three Dog Night, Cyan, number 4 from 1973. Now, let me tell you a story. 1973, I started the year at Stevenson Elementary in Heath, Ohio, and I got done with 4th grade there. And then in 5th grade, we moved again, and I was starting at Johnny Clem Elementary in Newark. 4th grade is where they really hit you with the times tables. You start learning your multiplication and your division and all that crap. I missed like 4 weeks of school in 1st grade and have never mathed properly ever since. I'm just never any good at it. And of course, those were the years where new math was coming in. I could not do my times tables to save my life. Could not do it at all. A family friend who I always referred to as Grandma Tut Tut, because she was always telling me Tut Tut when I was little, sent a box of records to my mom that were done in this sing-song voice, Mr. Rogers style almost, by this one singer. And I couldn't stand those things. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. I'm like, no. In 1972, a group of educators, a group of musicians, and a group of television executives got together to teach kids math on Saturday morning. I would have flunked 4th grade without multiplication rock. Number 3. This is an OG copy from 1973, as you can tell from the wear. It was reissued, which I'd love to get the reissue from Record Store Day. I think it was 2017. I would have flunked 4th grade without this album. I learned every song on this album. Within 2 months, I had memorized my entire times tables, was able to do the timed 1-minute test, quickly thinking I wasn't anywhere near the top, but before I'd only been able to do 5 or 6 problems, and then I was doing 60 and 70. And even my teacher told my mom it was a great idea to get me this album. The music is timeless. Bob Duro wrote all of the songs, legendary jazz performer. They were performed by Bob, by Blossom Dearie, by Grady Tate. Wonderful stuff. And every kid from my generation knows this show, knows all of the Schoolhouse Rock shows, which it later came to be known as. There was Multiplication Rock, Grammar Rock, America Rock, Science Rock, and later on, for a brief period in 1982, there was a piece of the show called Scooter Computer and Mr. Chips. And a number of people who cover Schoolhouse Rock on the web also include Menudo on ABC and its Spanish language stuff, but they're not officially a part of the Schoolhouse Rock series. Multiplication Rock saved my childhood. I mean that quite literally. Without this, without Figure 8, without My Hero Zero, without Lucky 7 Samson, I was a goner. Thank you, Bob Duro, for saving my math life. And I still remember it and most of the other rocks to this day. And I have the CDs and I have the DVDs of all of them, because it's a fond childhood memory. Number 3, the soundtrack from Multiplication Rock from ABC. Number 2 on my 1973 list. I've talked about what a big fan of this woman I am, and I brought her up last time. This album is my favorite of all of her stuff. There isn't a bad song on here. And I think I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure it was probably either her most successful or her second most successful album. And I really think that it deserves to be remembered. Not a lot of people talk about it, but it is ultimately one of the best easy listening albums of all time, and one of the best female vocalists of all time albums. 1973, Helen Reddy, Long Hard Climb. Now, this doesn't include I Am Woman, but it does include Leave Me Alone, Ruby Red Dress, a song that Helen hated because of its repetition. Lovin' You, A Bit Okay, Don't Mess With a Woman, Delta Dawn, The West Wind Circus, If We Could Still Be Friends, Long Hard Climb, Until It's Time for You to Go, and The Old-Fashioned Way. I love every one of these songs. Helen's version of Delta Dawn was a huge hit, #1 hit. Don't Mess With a Woman was an attempt to recapture the Delta Dawn, the I Am Woman vibe, and I thought she did it, but they never released it as a single. I thought it would have been a great single. I also love the story song, The West Wind Circus. That song is just really an amazing piece of story work. Everything on this album is magnificent. Helen Reddy, to me, is magnificent. She was one of, if not my favorite, solo female vocalist in the 1970s. And I've loved almost everything I have by her. There's a few clunkers here and there. She wasn't perfect for singles or songs, but every album has something worth listening to. And to me, Long Hard Climb is the best of them all. Number 2 on my 1973 list, Helen Reddy and Long Hard Climb. You know, we're at that point again. And I promised this wouldn't happen every time. And I almost put Helen at #1, but I really couldn't, because although this album was basically filler, It has some of their favorite songs on it and a great oldies medley that introduced me to 50s music before American Graffiti. So once again, at number one on TC's list for the fourth year in a row, Now and Then, Carpenters. This is their fifth album, right? One, two, three, four, five. Fifth album. They were never fond of these portraits that were inside the album. And I don't know why. I think they're rather nice, but I know that Richard has said that they were never fond of these. They always liked the artwork on Made in America from 1981 much better. This album was unique at the time because it had on side two an oldies medley that ran the entire side of the album except for the opening and closing, which was their hit Yesterday Once More. It led into an oldies medley done like a radio station with Tony Peluso, their guitarist guy, doing the DJ on this set, doing Fun, 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 The End of the World, To Do Ron Ron, Dead Man's Curve, Johnny Angel, The Night Has a Thousand Eyes, Our Day Will Come, and One Fine Day. Karen and Richard flipping back and forth between what the normal voice of what that would be, because you would have had Fun, Fun, Fun would have been the Beach Boys, End of the World would have been Skeeter Davis, right? To Do Ron Ron was the Crystals, and so on and so forth. They did a great job with it. Now, when I say this was a filler album, it's because Richard admitted, again, they didn't have that much time to put this album together. And so that's how come the medley ended up. They were doing the medley in concert, and that's how come it ended up on the album. The other side of the album includes 3 monster hits, only 1 single in America, one that was a huge hit overseas, and another that is a huge, easy listening radio hit, plus 2 others. There was Sing, which came from Sesame Street, another big hit for them. Their incredible version of This Masquerade, which is still my favorite version of every version I've heard. I love Helen Reddy's, I love Leon Russell's, I love George Benson's. Karen knocks them all out of the ballpark. Heather, which Richard wrote and adapted from the music from a Geritol commercial. The first time I heard that, I'm like, isn't that the song they used in the Geritol commercial? He wrote it based on that song. Jambalaya on the Bayou, which was a monster hit in Europe. It was never released as a single in the States. Their cover of the Hank Williams classic. And I Can't Make Music, which is another song from Randy Edelman, who they'd recorded other songs by before. He was a songwriter friend of theirs. Now and Then, honestly, probably doesn't deserve... I mean, if those 3 albums that I have on CD were here, this would probably be number 3 or 4. It's a very, very good chance that Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells would have been number 1. But as at this point, because I don't, Now and Then, Carpenters, my number 1 album from 1973. There's a lot of great stuff from 1973. I mean, there was stuff I have or have had or have listened to a lot that I love, besides the 3 I own on CD, and I do own some of these on vinyl and CD. Al Green's Call Me. Al Green Can Do No Wrong by Me. The debuts from the Spinners. An album called Room to Grow by Barnaby Bye, which I got from Robert over at Robsker Music, who I'd never been able to get a hold of them, the Barnaby Bye albums. I'm a huge Billy and Bobby Alessi fan, and that's where they started. Great album. Foreigner by Cat Stevens, Inner Visions by Stevie Wonder, Wovoka by Redbone, All About a Feeling by Donna Fargo, Around the World, Three Dog Night, which I mentioned, and even getting into my love for beautiful music, Tony Mottola and the Quad Guitars, from Tony Mottola and the Quad Guitars. I love that kind of stuff. So those are some honorable mentions that I have or have listened to a lot on Spotify. My top 10 again. Number 10, What's Your Mama's Name by Tanya Tucker. Number 9, Killing Me Softly, Roberta Flack. Number 8, Marie Osmond, Paper Roses. Number 7, Heartbeat It's a Love Beat, the DeFranco Family. Number 6, the self-titled debut from Maria Moldauer. Number 5, We're an American Band by Grand Funk. Number 4, Cyan by Three Dog Night. Number 3, soundtrack from Multiplication Rock. Thank you so much. Number 2, Helen Reddy, Long Hard Climb. And at number 1, Now and Then by Carpenters. There's going to be at least one more Carpenters number 1. I got to be honest. I think. Maybe 2. I'm an unabashed Carpenters fan. I'm sorry. And 1970s was their era. I love a lot of this stuff. And 1974 is coming up, and it's going to be interesting because 1974 is really a year that blew my mind for music. It was pop, it was R&B, it was the beginnings of disco, it was country crossing over on a regular basis to the pop chart. It was more beautiful music, which I continue to love. It was a little bit of everything. And so 74 is going to kill me when it comes to doing the albums. I got a whole list of them. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to choose? It's really tough. These shows are really tough on me because I have to go back, and I realize they're a lot weird because these are albums nobody else is showing in their best of lists, but it's because I don't listen to a lot of classic rock. I never had a lot of classic rock. This is one of those years where it's an exception. I have them on CD, but not on vinyl. Although, ironically, I have Tubular Bells and the orchestral bells by the orchestral Tubular Bells and Tubular Bells 2 on vinyl. I don't have the original. I just have it on CD. And I didn't get that until my 20s when I first got a CD player. My musical tastes grow every year. As you can see, if you go back and look at the 70 list and go back and look at 73, in just 3 years, 4 years' time, I've matured a lot in style and substance. At least I hope so. On my way to being a good music fan, a decent record collector, and a loyal member of the vinyl community. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And if you have, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up if you can. And please leave a comment. I love hearing from you guys. You guys help me make it go where I need it to go and help me have fun with it and help inspire me to do new things. And I really appreciate that. I hope you will continue to watch and spread the word to other people as well. For Vinyl Recall this week, I'm T.C. Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. I'll see you on one of my other shows soon enough. Ciao, baby.